Howdy, friends and foes. My name is Kat. I'm an artist, teacher, and I don't know how to read, and I refuse to learn. And you're watching my new series where I talk about current art trends and forecast positive art futures. And I want to start this series with some super hot takes. I'm forecasting that's going to be a wet one out there today because of all the crying on the comment section. Get your umbrellas out, folks. I should probably put this away, huh? And don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, ring that bell, unfollow, unlike, ring that comment, like that bell. And don't forget to go over to my Patreon where I post exclusive art videos and content. Fuck, I just kicked my tripod. Okay, today I'm going to be talking about crypto art. That includes all art that incorporates blockchain technology. The reason why I would willingly put myself through this torture is not just to talk about crypto art, but the potential interesting movement that might exist as a response to it. And that is post-crypto. I'm going to be doing some serious explaining of all of this stuff. So before anybody comments, like, how can we possibly be in post-crypto? Crypto technology isn't over. We're not past it. You don't understand all of the future uses that... Walk away from the keyboard, Ethan. Okay? Go suck on a juice box until you've calmed down. Okay, honey? We're gonna get to it. I promise. And if you do leave a comment like that, I will know for a fact that you did not watch this video. And I'm giving permission for anybody to dunk on you. Give you an internet wedgie. So, unfortunately for the impatient, I can't quite talk about my theory of post-crypto in its entirety quite yet. Because we first need to rewind a couple of decades, set the foundation for where we are today, talk about what art movements are, and just give some greater context. So let's start there. What is an art movement? When we hear the term art movement, we might think of things like Impressionism or Modernism or Surrealism. But what the fuck does any of that mean? And what qualifies something as an art movement? An art movement can loosely be described as art made by a group of artists with a shared philosophy or goal within a specific time period. Those same philosophies or goals can be shared not only by visual artists, but by musicians or even philosophers. For example, Surrealism was a shared cultural movement from the 1920s into the 1950s that all sort of expressed a illogical or unnerving scene that was thought to come about from the unconscious mind. Artists like Dali or Magritte are commonly known surrealists, but there was also surrealist musicians, novels, and theater. Another way to think about it is movements are to art what genres are to music. I think there's a tendency to imagine art movements as progressing linearly through time, with one ending and another beginning in succession end to end. But that is not how it works. Many art movements take place at once. They can overlap with one another, they can be contained within each other, they may only exist for a very short period of time or only followed by very small amounts of artists. So it can get kind of convoluted, especially when we talk about movements like modernism that took place throughout the first half of the 20th century. But modernism is actually more of like a collection of smaller movements that all have similarities. For instance, a movement like Expressionism is considered part of modernism. But looking even further, Expressionism itself contains smaller movements like German Expressionism. And even German Expressionism had micro movements within it or different groups that followed different practices. So this is all to say that art movements do not progress one after another linearly through time. And more importantly, art movements usually come about as a reaction to previous art movements. To bring up modernism again, modernism was a movement that spawned from the rejection of previous art ideals. And then when modernism became so commonplace and people got tired of following those ideals, postmodernism came about, which was a rejection of all of those things. So now that we have a general idea of what art movements are, let's set the stage for where we are right now. In order to do that, I do have to talk about some more bullshit. So hang tight, we're gonna get there. Let's talk about digital and post-digital. I think most people have some idea of what digital art is, at least as a medium. And while people might just think of it as things drawn on the computer, it expands far beyond that, and it actually started in the 1960s. Broadly, it's any art that embraces digital technology in the art making process. Now we barely even notice when things like illustration or photography or animation is digital because it has been incorporated so thoroughly through art and society that it's just the norm now. And alongside the growth and popularity of digital art came a movement that responded to that, which first started gaining acknowledgement in the early 2000s by artists and scholars like Mel Alexanderberg. This movement is called post-digital. Post-digital is challenging to define because, like modernism, it contains sort of subtypes of art, and it's mostly been written about by academics who write things intentionally so that no one else knows how to fucking read it. But here is my translation. Post-digital is an art practice that pushes back against the trends created by digital technology in art and, by extension, society. And I know it can be kind of confusing because we typically use the prefix post when we're talking about something after the word that follows it, but not in this case. Quote, post-digital does not aim to describe a life after digital, but rather attempts to describe the present-day opportunity to explore the consequences of the digital and the computer age. It's got so dark. Why does it have to get dark at literally 4 o'clock? Okay, no, we're gonna fix this. Okay, I fixed my light. So even when I try to explain post-digital, it still kind of sounds like a load of shit. So I think it's easier to kind of get a grasp on it if we show some examples of what it looks like. One type of art that I think is very clearly post-digital is glitch art. Glitch art intentionally manipulates the errors of electronic devices and digital files for new creations. We have all encountered glitches when using technology before, and they are not usually intended by the creator of the program or the device, and they're not generally wanted as a user. But artists have appropriated those digital corruptions intentionally. Digital technology has progressed imaging into higher definition and more pixels and larger sensors. And instead of completely embracing that advancement, as general society does, post-digital turns it on its head. Glitch art technically makes images worse by the metric of advancing technology in photography and video, for example. Even some traditional artists make post-digital art as well. A moment you can point to for spawning a particular post-digital aesthetic was when Apple released the ability to take panoramic photos natively on iPhones. When using the panorama tool, you'll often encounter distortions or splicing of objects as your phone kind of stitches the image together. And while that's usually not intended, when artists experience this, they almost immediately started recreating the same aesthetic and the same errors with paint. Artists like Nicholas Uri were one of the first people to do this. So they're not only using that technology in making their art, they're subverting it by incorporating the flaws and the mistakes. I would even describe some of my own paintings as being post-digital because they incorporate a sort of pixelated, blurred aesthetic. So while this is all fine and dandy, what does this have to do with crypto, let alone post-crypto? Well, the rise and integration of one of the newest trends in digital technology, blockchain technology, and by extension cryptocurrency, fueled what is now being called crypto art. Just like the rise of digital art created the movement post-digital as a response to it, I think the same would apply to crypto art. So let's talk about it. If you follow me on Twitter or you watched my previous video on NFTs, you know how I feel about crypto art. If you haven't and you are still wondering what the fuck NFTs are, go watch my NFT video where I break it down and dissect all of the problems that I have with them. But in short, I think they're one of the worst things to happen to art, possibly ever. So what is crypto art anyway? Crypto art is the practice of creating, authenticating, and exchanging ownership of art using blockchain technology. While this has mostly taken the form of NFTs, I do not want to limit this definition to just NFTs. The reason being is not all NFTs are art or art related. And I think as blockchain technology progresses, we are going to see different ways that it's going to be incorporated into art without necessarily being an NFT. Crypto art as a term, I think, better encapsulates the philosophy of using blockchain technology to create an artificial digital scarcity for the intention of exchanging ownership for it for money. And the ramifications of society and large, major art institutions accepting this change in philosophy of the ownership of digital images, and as a result, the explosion of monetary value of millions of pieces of art in the form of NFTs across hundreds of brand new platforms is culturally significant to identify. I have hesitated in the past to use the term crypto art because I think on its face, it appears that by calling it art and an art movement, it gives legitimacy to it. But while it's not technically a new medium of art making, that doesn't necessarily disqualify it from being an art movement. And calling it crypto art and an art movement also doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be here forever or even a long time. It's impossible to know how long this trend will last, but it is a trend. The unfortunate truth is that it is here right now, and it doesn't appear to be going away in the near future. Billions of dollars are invested in it by disgustingly rich people who want to see it succeed, which should be concerning, by the way. We are seeing companies and art institutions either fully embracing it or flirting with the idea of embracing it, like auction houses or universities or even companies like Adobe. So being able to attach a name to the philosophies that drive NFTs and not just NFTs themselves means it won't be impossible to apply criticisms to the ever-shifting technology that is constantly trying to skirt those criticisms. Since we are staring down a blockchain hell future, I think it'll be important to identify the counter movement that is arising as a result. That movement is post-crypto. So here's how I'm proposing it be defined. The creation or distribution of art that responds to the use of blockchain technology to capitalize on the ownership of art. My theory is that with the explosion of NFTs, artists are going to be faced with a crossroads where they can choose to go down the brain-wormed path of turning anything and everything into an NFT or incorporating blockchain technology to profit off of their art in some fashion. Or they will just completely ignore it, or they will directly oppose it and make art that responds to it. So what does art that is post-crypto look like? I don't think it's going to necessarily take one specific form or appearance, since it is more philosophically focused rather than appearance driven. But I can point to a couple of things that I think could be identified as post-crypto. And I'm going to post some theories of what could be coming in the future. One of the first examples of something that I would consider post-crypto was the GIF selling campaign by the indie game developer Far Few Giants back in April of 2021. The developer put GIFs from the forthcoming game for sale on the game selling platform itch.io, stating that if you purchased one of the GIFs, you would, quote, not get an NFT. They were put up for sale in limited quantities, ranging anywhere from $10 to $500. Of course, you could just right-click the GIFs that were on the webpage and save them as a copy, and it would be no different than someone who purchased the GIF. And that was the point. It was a middle finger to the concept of owning digital images that NFT has popularized. And the stunt actually worked, too. People bought the GIFs, and almost all of them sold out. And in addition, the developer pledged to plant 15 trees for each GIF that was sold, which ended up totaling to over 1,700 trees planted. I think this project is hilarious and genius. And if something were to ever be considered post-crypto, I think this would be it. Another project in the same vein comes from my friend and talented illustrator Eden, who goes by Helvetica Blank, who did all of the art that I'm using for this video's title screens. At the beginning of December, she announced that she was going to be taking on anti-NFT commissioned digital artwork. The pieces would be commissioned with the intent that they would be put together in a physical zine as well as distributed online for free. This is a direct subversion of the concept of using money to directly limit the ownership of art that crypto art is so preoccupied with, and instead using it to enhance the distribution. As a response to the rise of crypto art, artists on social media have begun sharing the recommendations for other artists to include amendments on contracts for commissions, stating not only that they keep the copyright of the image, but that they will not allow the usage of those images for NFTs. On top of this, artists have started to publicly pledge that they will not be involved with NFTs, and it even included it in their Twitter bios and Instagram profiles. This is done not just as a statement, but also as a signal to anybody that comes across their artwork being stolen and put on NFT platforms, so that they will know that that is not a authorized version by the artist and that it is stolen, which is a thing that is happening quite a lot. Do these types of declarations and protests make an artist a post-crypto artist? I don't know. Maybe. I don't know. You tell me. I could also see some trends forming as a pushback against crypto art in the increase of physical, tangible copies of digital art, which is like already popular, but I could see it growing even more, sort of as a response to getting something with more personal value instead of prioritizing the ownership of intangible images. And if I'm even to wax theorize further, I could almost see the future of some avenues of 3D printing being post-crypto as well. In a lot of ways, 3D printing is kind of the antithesis of NFTs. Think about it. 3D printed models are digital files often publicly uploaded for free for people to download and then create their own tangible artworks from. You can even get access to 3D printers at public libraries for extremely cheap, making it maybe one of the most accessible forms of art creation, at least ones that utilize new technology. It ignores the prospect of capitalizing off of a design and instead promotes the distribution of it for free for the benefit of other people. I have a video about 3D printing planned for this series that I think I'm gonna do next, and I'm really excited about it, so stay tuned for that. And I want to end this video by saying that I think it is possible to incorporate blockchain technology into the art making process somehow in a way that is not icky and doesn't just use it to make money. And I would genuinely love to see that art. I think it could be really interesting. And if it doesn't already exist, I think it is coming soon. And of course, this is all just my opinion and I'm theorizing here. I'm just some bitch with a YouTube channel. Art, and the words we use to describe it, are just made up. Why can't I make up my own words for it? So I hope you enjoyed this video. And if you'd like to support me, you can not buy an NFT and you can go over to my Patreon and become a patron there. I upload exclusive content, previews for public content, and you even get your name in the credits of each video. I have a million projects that I'm working on right now, but I've been having a bunch of health shit happening that have kind of delayed all of that. So I apologize for the radio silence. But I wanted to say thank you for all of the new support for my videos. It's really wild to have 2 videos over 100,000 views. I was just genuinely not expecting that. It's kind of bizarre in a mostly good way. But yeah, I appreciate that you believe that I'm making good things and I want to continue making videos that I really care about and that I think are interesting. And I'm really grateful that there's people watching it. So thank you very much. And until next time, do an art. I think my brain has turned into fucking dirt pudding.